Hello. I read a new novel recently, which I've been puzzling over so much and wondering what does it all mean? And I've been reading reviews and listening to interviews with the author and discussing it with so many readers. And I still don't entirely know what to think about this story because it's one which is purposefully open to multiple interpretations. And I don't even know entirely how I feel about it because this whole process has been both fun and infuriating. And so the novel is Audition by Katie Kitamura. And I knew that there was a twist or a narrative shift in this story, but where it goes, I was not expecting and was really surprised by it and confused by it. And so it set me off on this trail trying to figure out what happened. But I do have some theories about it, multiple theories actually, which I will get into, but I won't talk about any spoilers initially. I'll make it really clear when I'm getting into spoiler territory because I want to talk about this book more generally at first and my overall impressions and feelings about it because it's a really interesting one and it is one that I am so eager to continue discussing with so many other readers. So this novel, to just give a very brief overview without trying to get into any spoilery stuff yet, the story is narrated by an unnamed woman living in New York City, and she has a husband, Tomas. They've been together for a long time, and at the very beginning of the book, she meets a young man who's not her husband at a restaurant, and the relationship between these two people is uncertain at first, and we find that on their initial meeting with each other, this young man has said to the narrator, I am your son, I'm your long lost son. And she says, no, that's not physically possible. And that's all I'm going to get into talking about the story and what happens at first. And I don't think that gives too much away because where this story goes next is to some very different places. So I know that this novel can be interpreted in so many different ways because the author has said this repeatedly in different interviews and that she purposefully made it this way. But to me, what this novel is really about is kind of inquiry into our relationships with our partners, with our family members, and with people we encounter in our everyday lives, and how we modulate the way that we respond to other people and interact with them, and in what way are we self-consciously trying to represent a certain emotion or feeling, or try to put on a performance for them, and in what way are we being our authentic selves. And it's about the tension of that, and of course it's exploring this in a very literal way because the unnamed narrator, she is an actress, so she is very self-conscious about the way that she presents herself and the way that she modulates her voice and her body language, and she is thinking about this all the time in her interactions with other people as well, just as she's out in the world and has this sense of self-consciousness and wondering how other people are interpreting and who she is, and how they are defining her based on her appearance and her mannerisms and her voice. And so it's looking looking at these all these little tensions between us, and there's a very significant line fairly on early on in the book where the author writes, there are always two stories taking place at once: the narrative inside the play and the narrative around it, and the boundary between the two is more porous than you might think. That is both the danger and the excitement of the performance. And so yeah, it is looking at this tension between the person who is being observed and the observer, and I think it's interesting how that line can both relate to our interactions with each other in real life, but also to the reading experience, because there's two sort of levels of things going on when we're reading a book, and especially a book like this. There is the text before us, that is the literal text, and there is everything that we bring as readers personally to the text, all of our experiences, our thoughts and feelings and understanding of the world. And the author has said how she believes that books are really an interactive experience, that the actual writing of them is an interactive experience. I mean, she has written the book, but it doesn't come alive until it is read by a reader, and how everything that reader brings to the book and the story. Whoa! That almost gave me a heart attack. This big travel journal just fell off from my shelf and so made this massive noise. So sorry about that interruption. But I don't know if this is the ghost of the character in the story coming alive to haunt me and pass comment on how I am discussing this novel. But yeah, anyway, so the story, I think for me, very much is about questioning the tensions in our relationships like this, and especially how it is exploring her connection with her husband and with this young man, whatever their relationship actually is. And I also think it's about exploring the question of whether or not we have children in our lives, which is a big thing for any adult deciding whether or not to have a child, and for any couple deciding whether or not to have a child. And something that I think is so interesting about this in how it explores different versions of this, and that obviously there are pros and cons to the experience of having children or not. And so that is centrally what the story means to me. Now, since this novel has been self-consciously written in a way that it can be interpreted in multiple different ways, I think that's quite a bold choice on the author's part, because I'm sure some readers like me will be very intrigued and will approach it kind of like a puzzle, where they look for clues and try to figure out the meaning of it as a whole. But I imagine for other readers who more appreciate a story that has a certain conclusion and you can understand it fully, what the meaning or even just what happens in the story, that those readers might feel unsatisfied by this. And not just that, but that the might be unsatisfied that the author has been manipulative in this way, that she has planted things in the stories that can be interpreted in so many different ways, and so like has placed kind of details around like this, like clues to a mystery which can't be solved. And I imagine for many people that will be really frustrating. But personally, I do think this novel is worth engaging with, and just as a reading experience, experience and intriguing to see what you as a reader make of it when first reading it. So I would recommend it. But now I will get into some spoiler territory and talk about my different theories, or I think the main theories that can be taken away about what this story means. So if you've not read this novel yet, you might want to pause or stop this video and come back to it at a later point when you've read the book. Or if you've decided you don't want to read it, then maybe you just want to watch on. And but if you have read it and have your own theories about it, and if you agree with me or disagree with me, I would love to hear about that in the comments below. So there is a big shift in between the first and second parts of this book, when she initially encounters this young man in the restaurant, and then in the second part she is back in that same restaurant but with her husband Tomas, and now this young man Xavier is their son. So it moves from the first part of the book where he could definitely not be her son, because she refers to how she has been pregnant twice before, but the first time she had an abortion, and then the second time she had a miscarriage, and so this would be an impossibility. So my first theory about this is that these two separate parts are taking place in two different realities, that this might be some kind of multiverse where there are many things about these two realities that are similar, but there are some crucial differences, like Xavier is now suddenly their son. So that I think that's the first most kind of obvious theory. Then second, that Xavier, in between the two sections of the book, he has been hired or enlisted in some way to play the part of their son and move into their apartment, because they discuss, she discusses in the first part of the book, that she and Tomas are going through a lot of difficulties in their tensions there, which will become evident towards the end of the first part, when Tomas is sending her messages saying that they need to talk. What they need to talk about, that is not made entirely clear, and it's also not entirely clear whether Tomas saw her talking with Xavier in this restaurant, and so yeah, maybe they devised as a couple as a way of repairing their relationship, and a way of maybe Tomas, or she, feels that their relationship would have been better if they had a child, and so why not hire one? And Xavier is a young man looking for work, and so yeah, he becomes and plays the part of their son. Of course, that doesn't work out, as we find out in the second part of the book. Now, the third theory, I think, is that Xavier, because it refers to how he is writing a play, or is Hannah writing the play, because there's a question of that too, that Xavier has this, giant ugly desk in their apartment, at which he should be working, but actually it's Hannah, his girlfriend, or the woman that he brings into the apartment. She it refers to how she spends a lot of time there writing and working. So, but it at the end of the second part, it says Xavier has written a play, and so perhaps the play that he has written is the scene which the narrator is performing in the first part of the book, and that she is going into this restaurant, and the exchange she's having this with this young man, and that Thomas enters, that it's this is all a play, and so it kind of loops back to the first part of the book. So that is the third theory. And then the fourth main theory, I think, is that the unnamed narrator is experiencing some kind of psychological difficulty or dementia, and she has literally forgotten that Xavier is their son, and so in the first part she is denying this, and that but then in the second part she has accepted or remembered or recalled that he is their son, and there are references made that she is having some kind of difficulties. I think that Tomas and Xavier refer to at different points, and also there's the point about the actor that she knows, that he forgets his lines, and that she was really excited to work with, and then and then was very disappointed to find out that he literally can't remember his lines, and line by line they have to be fed to him, and of course that is not her condition because she performs in a play. She knows all of her lines, and but maybe she has this other thing, or like gaps in her memory, and so I think those are the four main theories, and there might be others, and I would love to hear about any other ones, and I'd love to hear if you could want to make a strong case for one theory or another. I mean, I instantly, when there was the switch in the story, I was thinking more along the lines of that Xavier is kind of performing the role as their son, and it made me think about the great play Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf by Edward Albee, where a middle-aged couple in it, they pretend to have a son together, and they have jointly imagined details about this son's past, and they talk about him as if his being is a physical reality when it is in fact not. And I wondered if it was a kind of inverse of this, where a couple enlist a young man to perform the role as their son in a physical way. But I think it's really difficult to know what theory is more valid or makes more sense. And of course, as the author said in the interviews, that it purposefully is made in this way to be interpreted in so many different ways, which I kind of wish I didn't know about that, and that she didn't say that. I mean, I think it would. I mean, obviously, this question is going to be asked of her in any interview discussing this novel. But I think if I had known that maybe she had her own theories about it, and even if it wasn't ever explicitly made clear in the novel, that it might have been better just to have it leave it ambiguous and think that maybe there is one solution to it. But it is so fascinating, and also the tone of this story, how there's such an unsettling feeling throughout this tale, isn't there, that something really bad might happen, and there's kind of creepy little details that are inserted here and there, and this culminates in a very dramatic way towards the end of the book, especially in the interactions with Hannah, and how Hannah immediately is this antagonistic presence in their lives, and the narrator doesn't take to her at all, and then there's the very weird scene towards the end of the book when she enters into the apartment, and she discovers Tomas and Xavier playing this kind of game of hide and seek with Hannah, and then discover her, and then it becomes weirdly sexual, and they're kind of groping her, and the narrator is just observing this, and how Hannah looks at her in a kind of very confrontational way, which I felt was like a bit over the top to have in the story. I mean, I guess the author felt like, there needed to be somewhat more of a dramatic conclusion to this novel, rather than just like another morning of them all having pastries together, since they have so many pastries together like every morning. But I felt like that was like a bit forced, and but I think you could question and interpret, maybe Hannah doesn't actually exist. Maybe she is a kind of paranoid fantasy by the narrator of someone that might replace her, because I think part of the meaning of this novel too is interrogating this fear about aging, especially I think women feel this a lot more as they get older, that they're becoming more invisible, that they are less visible to people around them and the gaze of others, and that she might be replaced, like literally, that her husband might replace her with a younger woman, and the fear and paranoia about that. And but yeah, I think there are so many different ways to think about this book, and there are a couple of questions that I'm kind of left pondering as well. Central things about the book, that she is an unnamed narrator, and why is she left unnamed? That's an interesting choice on the author's part, and I think possibly because she is so self-conscious in this way, both in her profession as an actress and as an individual out in the everyday world, that not naming herself or revealing her name gives her a degree of anonymity that she's not able to experience in the rest of her life. And also, I think there's an interesting racial angle to this, which is just only mentioned fleetingly in different parts, about how part of the reason why it could be so plausible that Xavier is her son is that he resembles her physically, and it's referred to how they're both not white, and as living in New York City and in America, that they are not white, and Hannah makes a reference that when she first meets her, that she's inspired by her as an actress, as someone who is also not white, and I think maybe her not being named also gives this kind of sense of freedom, that a name doesn't need to define her as a person, and that because people make all sorts of assumptions once they know someone's race or heritage, and so I think that might be a possible angle too. And another big question that I'm left with at the end of this book, beside the central meaning and story of it and how to interpret it, is the title itself, Audition, and who is the one being auditioned, because there's so much in this novel about performance that it would seem more natural to call this novel Performance or Performing or something like that. But no, it's called Audition. And so who is the one auditioning? Is it the narrator that's auditioning for a role, and whether the play that she performs in, that she can continue performing and doing her job as an actress? Or is it Xavier that's being auditioned for the role of a son? Or is Tomas being auditioned to continue his role as her husband? Since a lot of the tensions in the early part of the novel, I think, come out of the sense that she has had affairs in the past, and that this is something that they've kind of dealt with but are still kind of wrestling with. Or is Hannah the one being auditioned to literally replace her as a wife and a mother? And and I think that's a really interesting teasing question of the novel as well. But yeah, this story raises so many more interesting points and questions and things that I've been pondering and still continue to think about. So if you have read this book, I would love to know what you think about it. What is your interpretation of its meaning? What theory do you think is most plausible or likely, or do you have an entirely different theory? I would love to hear other theories as well. But thank you for watching me discuss and ponder this book, and I hope you're doing well and reading good things, and I will speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.